How's it going, everybody? Rocky Mountain EDC here, and today I have another overview and impressions video for you guys on a very classic pocket knife. This is going to be on the Benchmade Freek, the 560 BK-1. This is otherly known as the Benchmade Super Freek because it has the upgraded M4 steel and G10 handles. So we're going to be looking at this today for an overview and some of my impressions of using and carrying this knife, and to kind of give you a little bit of insight on what I like about it and what I don't. So if you end up enjoying the video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the Rocky Mountain EDC channel if you are not already. So, like I said, this is the upgraded version of the Freek. Now, the Freek is, I would say, a standard large sized knife. So the standard Freek comes in with sort of a plastic type of handle material with this rubbery inlay in it to kind of give it a grippy texture. And then the blade on the standard Freek comes in CPM S30V. So very well-rounded steel and just a very simple knife. Now, this is the upgraded version, the Super Freek. So we get this beautiful kind of layered G10 of gray and black, and then a standard kind of liner G10 in this red color. So it gives it a really cool look, very unique, very grippy, but without being overly aggressive. So if you know Spyderco's G10, it's very aggressive, very grippy. Now this is not going to be as aggressive as that, so it's not really going to tear up your pocket, and they do flatten down some of that G10 under the pocket clip as well. So really neat there on that. Then we have for the blade steel CPM M4, which is one of my favorite blade steels simply because it is both high in edge retention and toughness. Now, every steel, no matter what you're going to be choosing to have as far as its marks, right? Good corrosion resistance, good toughness, good sharpenability, good edge retention, you're going to sacrifice something in a different category. So a lot of the times when we look at edge retention on a knife, it's not going to be the toughest. So this kind of solves that problem by being both tough and able to hold an edge for a really long time. Now, the caveat to that is it's not corrosion resistant, not very corrosion resistant. So Benchmade puts a coating on there, which is really nice. And it's also not going to be super easy to sharpen. So with that, really good blade steel, and this is going to be a high flat grind, so this is actually going to be really good for slicing. So it's not a full flat grind like we would see on like a Spyderco PM2, but it is a high flat grind. So we see up until this point right here, this transition point, this is where that portion starts. And it's both thick enough and thin enough behind the edge that it is robust and slicey all at the same time, which is really nice. Again, it has the axis lock for locking and another form of deployment, standard thumb stubs for either flicking out or slow manual opening. And we have Benchmade standard split arrow pocket clip on there as well, which actually has really good retention, makes it really easy to slide in and out of the pocket, and you don't feel like this is going anywhere. Now, it is important to keep in mind that this is not a deep carry pocket clip, so it is going to have a portion that does stick out of your pocket. Now, you can obviously add Benchmade's deep carry pocket clip to that and eliminate that problem. you do have just a standard lanyard hole back there, so nothing special, but if you do want that, it is in a good location, right towards the edge, versus some other knives that, you know, place the lanyard hole in a funky position. So it is in a good position if you so choose to do that. And we are going to have partial steel aligners for the locking mechanism, but this is going to go about halfway on the knife. So you're actually going to get a little bit more of this kind of partial steel liner in here that's going to act as kind of that rigidity part holding all the mechanisms of the axis lock and the blade and everything. You are going to get a little bit more of that as opposed to something like the Benchmade bug out, which does not go about halfway. It goes about a fourth of the way down. And then we have the 940, which actually goes down pretty far down here. So you kind of get a good portion of that that kind of inset liner in there, which is nice. So it is going to be plenty robust. Plus, not too concerned with this really strong G10. I mean, this is some really thick G10 on there. So this knife is really good in a lot of different ways, and I kind of categorize this as a light, heavy duty EDC knife. It's robust enough and large enough that it's a full-size knife, and because of that blade steel, because of the materials, and because of this thicker axis lock that we have on here compared to something like the bug out, it is going to be really robust, really strong, right? But it's still light. It's not a heavy knife. It's easy to carry, so it's still a very everyday carry type of knife, but it's more robust. So as far as what we would consider as heavy duty folders, right? If we look at the ZT-0562, this could be classified as a heavy duty folder. Now, when does it get to the point to where it's overbuilt to where it's going to be able to withstand more than just everyday tasks, right? So where's that cusp? And I think, including this knife, they fall on the very top end of that cusp, in that they're still in the EDC realm. I don't think I would still go in bushcraft with this. Hence, I don't think you should do that with any folder. But there are overbuilt folding pocket knives that if you were in a situation where you had to use it in unconventional means, that you could be assured that it would be okay. So I don't think that this necessarily fits that realm for me, but it's definitely a everyday carry knife that I'm going to be pretty confident that's going to be able to withstand a lot of the different tasks. And really, that's going to come down to the blade steel, because you can make everything about the handle material and the locking mechanism super strong. But if the blade steel is going to be extremely prone to chipping, or if the blade profile is very thin behind the edge and you have a very narrow tip, very thin tip, is it really heavy duty? So yeah, all the other parts of the knife are strong, but if the blade itself is going to be a weak point, it's not really a heavy duty blade. But this, because it has a relatively thick but still capable in terms of slicing behind the edge, thickness there on the blade, it's not really a concern, and it's able to do that slicing while remaining robust. And that CPM M4 is going to really resist a lot of microchipping and damage while still maintaining that edge. So overall, I think that this is a really, really good knife. The ergonomics on this thing are ridiculous. Surprisingly, it's neutral, yet gives you plenty of profile to get a grip on. So you feel like your hand's locked in, but you're not forced, right? So sometimes things like the Spyderco Manix 2, very good ergonomics, but you're kind of fixed in the ergonomics of that knife, right? So when we look at the Manix 2 here, right, we have all these great kind kind of jimping and swells and areas where you can put your hand, but you're kind of forced in a particular position. If you have larger hands, or if your hands don't really fit this well, it's kind of uncomfortable. But this is having regions here where you can put your index finger and then having that separation between the other 3 fingers, a very gradual thumb ramp here with jimping on it, and it's neutral, yet you feel like you're locked in. And that's pretty rare to do, to be neutral and that it feels good with gloves or it feels good with larger hands while also locking your hand in is very hard to do. And I think Benchmade on the Benchmade Super Freek does that really well. Now, it's also important to mention that the G10 is very thick and it's contoured really nicely. It's also not super aggressive, so it is comfortable holding the hand. You have plenty of knife here to hold onto that it's really not, you don't feel like you're holding on to something small, right? That's kind of cumbersome or hard to handle. Like the Benchmade Bug Out, very neutral, doesn't really lock your hand in, but it's so thin that you don't really feel like, you feel like there's too much hand and too little knife, right? And there's plenty of other knives out there. But this fills out your hand really nice, really comfortable. You feel like you could just work with this all day long. And it's a great knife. As far as the edge retention of the M4, I think it's holding up extremely well. Haven't had to sharpen this at all. I've only maintained it using a leather strop, and it has maintained a razor sharp edge for a really long time. Now, granted, that's just using basic EDC tasks. I have cut zip ties with it, no problem, no chipping. Sometimes with some blade steels, if you do cut a lot of zip ties, you can get a little bending or warping of the steel or possibly chipping. Haven't noticed that with this. So it's held up really well. Again, if you keep track of that M4, of that blade edge, you really shouldn't have to worry about sharpening it too often. And again, when you do get to the point where you have to sharpen it, as long as you have diamond plated stones or some type of diamond coarse sharpener, you should be fine. And just take your time and take it easy. But if you don't even want to sharpen that and you're worried about the M4, Benchmade has their lifetime sharpening warranty where you can just send this in and they will sharpen it back to a factory edge for you. So that's really nice. And I think that this is one of the more underrated knives from Benchmade. Yes, of course, I love my Benchmade 940 and it's a great knife, and I kind of talked about how the 940 in its own video is kind of a blending of this heavy duty folder with this light duty folder. And it's kind of in between the Bug Out and the Freek. Nonetheless, the Freek has a purpose. I have no doubt that when I grab this knife, I'm going to be well assured that it's going to handle any task. And I'm not going to be too worried about it failing on me or the blade chipping or the handle, being subjected to a lot of damage or wear. It's going to be a very robust knife. And honestly, this can last you a lifetime. And it has just enough flair to it that it's not overly simple. It's not just another black knife, right? It has enough pizzazz to it with those red aluminum barrel spacers and the red G10 liner and that black and gray G10 that it's going to have enough to look good while also performing good. So that is the Benchmade Super Freek. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I highly recommend that the Benchmade Freek, as far as collecting knives, or if you just want, again, a light, heavy-duty EDC fixed blade, folder, this is definitely a great option. And if you've been on the fence about this knife for a while, I highly recommend that if you get the opportunity, like with any knives, that if you have a shop, if you're able to get it in hand, always do that first. But if you have been on the fence about this knife, I highly recommend that you get it. You will not be disappointed. Thanks again for watching. Rocky Mountain EDC signing out.